Hellfire Gala, when did Marvel's Merry Mutants become part of the Katy Keene crew?
Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess featuring a bonus pin-up and the other two books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online bookstores everywhere today. When did Marvel Comics become Archie Comics? That's the question I have to ask as related to Marvel's latest event called the Hellfire Gala. Now, this latest event featuring the X-Men features all of Marvel's mutants dressed up in their finest fashions as they look to put together a new team. And when I take a critical examination of this so-called event, it just shows me how deeply lost the editorial at Marvel really is. And it's clear to me that the editors over at Marvel really don't know what to do with the X-Men after your Jonathan Hickman possibly did fix much of the damage to Marvel's mutants that transpired over the last decade. And it's clear to me that from looking at pictures of this so-called event that the editors there are just completely lost. Because this Hellfire Gala looks like something out of an old Katy Keene comic book where your Katy Keene Archie Comics fashion model would go out here and look to put on her fanciest outfits so that she could prance down a runway. And that's not the look that most old school comic fans like myself would want to see on Marvel's premier mutant team or Marvel's premier mutant superheroes. Now, as somebody who grew up reading the X-Men ever since the 80s, I know that a X-Men event was considered to be one of the big staples of a fall. And when I was a kid in high school and we had the X-Men events going on, I remember being filled with anticipation for those 9-part sagas that took place in Uncanny X-Men, your X Factor, and New Mutants. And those stories like Inferno, Extinction, Agenda, and I believe there was a third one, Fall of the Mutants. These were big events over at Marvel, and these were the books that practically had you counting down the days until you could pick up the next issue, because you practically got a story that was a major event that had been building up from years of Chris Claremont establishing little plot threads here and there, and all of it would pay off as all of the mutants would come together to take on a big menace like your Mr. Sinister in the Inferno storyline, or I think it was Cameron Hodge in the Extinction Agenda. And again, these were huge events back in the day, but when I think about what's happened with this Hellfire Gala, it's just a pale shadow of those glory days of the X-Men. And instead of me thinking about the X-Men, I just think that this is an X-mess of excess. And when I'm looking at this whole Hellfire Gala event, it just shows me again how out of touch editorial is, because instead of us seeing these heroes coming together to take on some big menace to the Krakoan society, what we get are a group of heroes putting on their best outfits and dressing up. And that's not a good look for a superhero comic, which is supposed to be targeted towards boys. No, this is a look that emasculates many of the boys' favorite heroes and practically promotes an effeminized agenda as I see it. Because when you've got your most popular superheroes who are known for their powers out here focusing primarily on getting all dressed up and putting on their finest fashions, that's not a story that most male comic fans are going to find appealing. No, most male comic fans, when they look at something like that, they're going to get really turned off because that's something that more fits a Katy Keene comic book from Archie than the X-Men. No, when most comic fans like myself, when we think of the X-Men, we think of the mutants coming together to take on one of these big menaces that looks like it wants to try to threaten to erase mutant kind, or some sort of threat that wants to really be a threat to all of the heroes of the earth that the X-Men have to take on before it gets too dangerous. That's what an event used to be back in the late 80s and early 90s, when we had legendary writers like Chris Claremont and artists like Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri drawing these classic titles. But in today's Marvel's X-Men, we don't get that. No, we get this extremely, as I see it, dysfunctional idea of a Hellfire Gala with everybody putting on their finest and getting all dressed up to go nowhere, because that's where the sales are going to go on these books. Because most X-Men comic fans, they don't pay $4 and $5 to see heroes putting on outfits and looking like something out of a Cosmopolitan or a Vogue magazine, or looking like something strutting down Project Runway. No, most comic fans come looking for action and adventure, and what does Marvel give us but a fashion show, something that most comic fans have no interest in buying. And if you see a drop in sales due to this event, understand that this is something that happened because editorial wanted to push an agenda to try to probably make it where they were trying to play gender politics. And this is something that's going to alienate longtime X-Men fans, because most longtime X-Men fans, again, they wanted action and adventure in their events. They're not interested in seeing heroes putting on designer outfits and having a ball and just going to have a party. No, that's something that is part of an Archie comic, and that's where Marvel's editors, as I see it, belong. They belong doing Archie comics and doing books like Archie and Sabrina and Katy Keene, where the main focus of the stories is who Archie wants to take to the dance, Betty or Veronica, or can Sabrina conjure up an outfit that makes her the belle of the ball. That's the kind of story that belongs over at Archie, or one of these manga comics that is targeted for girls. It is not a story that is appropriate for an X-Men book, unfortunately, because Marvel has some really incompetent editors. They're out here tarnishing one of Marvel's most storied brands as related to its catalog. And this whole event, this Hellfire Gala, is one big ball of fail, and it just is an absolutely ridiculous story that should have never been taken to print. And if there was a good editor working over at Marvel, it probably would never gotten this far. I mean, this is another example of the type of incompetence that is alienating lots of longtime comic fans and making them walk away from Marvel. And because when they look at this whole gala with superheroes dressed up in suits and ties, it just defies logic. Because when you think about superheroes going out, I think about the classic X-Men, I think it's 96 or so to 99 or so, where the X-Men were out where Scott and Jean went to Rockefeller Center, and Jean put on her latest dress, and Scott was taking her to Rockefeller Center to see a show, and then Jean got captured by a Sentinel. And that's what we think of them X-Men when they dress up. It's a plot point as related to a story. Or we think about the original Hellfire Club storyline where the X-Men put on their suits to infiltrate to go into the Hellfire Club, and then later on went into battle. Not the fashion show being the main focus of the story, but the heroes dressing up and only putting on those type of outfits in order to go further advance the storyline. So when I look at this whole X-Men going to have a fashion show and have a ball as a primary story, it just shows how far Marvel has fallen and how they really don't have good editorial who can really put together some decent action and adventure storylines. And if this is what they're going to go out here and make the X-Men, they're going to make a big X-mess that will lead to the brand falling right back into oblivion once more. Now, if you want to pick up my first comic, E-Steam No Good Deed, you can find that comic on Amazon.com on Kindle for 99 cents. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks in a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business at paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.